Hello everybody and welcome to this conference talk. What I am going to be talking about today is improving your home office lighting by me, this guy here on the right. Hello everybody, I'm Camilo Sperberg and I will be your host for the next half an hour, give or take. I will begin with a list of topics I will be talking about. First of all, who this talk is aimed to. Next, I'll explain some definitions which will hopefully help you along the way. The next set of topics are going to be more hands-on as we are diving right into the concepts of light, temperature, quantity of light, and finally how to set them up. I'll talk about some advanced stuff as well to explain some concepts such as dimmer technology and the parts involved in a lighting fixture, while also giving some brief ideas for home automation integration. So, without further ado, the first thing I want to do is apologize to any interior designer, filmmaker, or basically anyone who knows a lot more of this topic than I do. I want to focus this talk more towards the do-it-yourselfer, which I am myself. But hey, we are all on this learning boat, so feel free to contact me and correct me if you feel like it. That way I can improve on this talk next time. So, some common definitions. You might have come across these concepts more than once if you have shopped for certain lights or seen some advertisements where manufacturers claim certain numbers. Well, the first one of these concepts, and probably the most popular one, is lumens. Lumens refers basically to the quantity of light that is coming from a light source, but it doesn't tell us where the light is shining. In that sense, it could be that all the light the manufacturer claims is effectively being generated inside the bulb, but if they constructed that bulb with a tinted glass that only allows for 2% of the light going through, for the users of that bulb it won't be able to illuminate much. Technically, yes, they are correct in the sense that that particular light bulb is producing, for example, 100 lumens, but if only 2 lumens pass through, well, that's not a lot. The next concept that is very handy to know about is candela. Candela is in a way much more useful because it describes how a certain light shines, measured in lux, which we will talk about in a second, and is best described when you have an isocandela plot, because at least in the automotive industry all lights and fixtures have to comply with a strict pattern light must follow. Candela is therefore able to describe how the light shines through, and you could actually test this. If you park your car in front of a wall and turn on the lights, you'll see this exact pattern on the wall, including the small crest in the middle, which is pretty awesome because it just shows how the manufacturers are able to create these patterns so exactly. The most important concept, however, is lux, as this is described as how much light is coming into a sensor placed on a specific location. That means that it will always give a value that is easy to measure and actually say something about how much actual light the human eye will be able to detect for that light source. The same applies for foot candle, which is just the imperial equivalent. Roughly 1 foot candle is the same as 10 lux, so the next time you see a fabricant or manufacturer claim that the light is producing 10,000 lux, check if there is a measured distance published. If this is not the case, then it is probably just a scam or bad information on their side. If we take a look at the electromagnetic spectrum, the human eye can detect wavelengths from about 300 nanometer, which corresponds to the more bluish colors, up to about 700 nanometers. between these wavelengths, the human eye can perceive certain colors to be more warmer or cooler, and as such we can measure that in Kelvin, which is actually used to measure temperatures. The next concept I would like to quickly explain is CRI, or Color Rendering Index. I haven't seen it many times, but nonetheless it might appear sometimes, and it is handy to be able to quickly identify what we are seeing. Basically, the CRI will try to tell us how faithful a light will illuminate objects by their true colors. It does so by giving us an indication with a 3-digit code, where the first digit represents the percentage in which the light is able to reproduce the true colors, while the other 2 digits represent at which temperature the light operates. As such, if we take the number 840, we now know that this particular light will illuminate an object by the true colors in at least an accuracy of 80%, and it will do so by using 4000 Kelvin. As such, we can confidently say that a particular light might be a good or bad choice for us based on this number. I have gathered some examples on this table, but that being said, I almost never see a CRI indication on commercial lamps. But now you know at least how to interpret this number should you come across it. Another piece of information that generally will be provided with professional lighting is UGR, or Unified Glare Rating. Put very basically, this is a measure of discomfort glare, which might result in simple annoyance in most cases, but in worst cases your light fixture may be the cause for eye strain or even headaches. The scale of UGR varies from 10 up to 31, where 10 represents no perceived discomfort at all, while 31 indicates pretty much intolerable discomfort. Different color temperatures may serve different purposes, and as we can see here, we can get a totally different effect depending on the color temperature. While 1000 Kelvin is pretty red and looks more like a candle, 10,000 Kelvin looks almost blue. While we might be able to find these extreme lamps commercially, the available lighting tends to concentrate more between 2000 and 6000 Kelvin. The effect that a light of about 2 to 3000 Kelvin produces is more cozy and calm. As such, it is best if you use this color temperature in your bedroom, for example, or your living room. It invites people to kind of relax and chill out and watch Netflix. For light that are between 3 and 5000 Kelvin, however, it provides a type of illumination that is more friendly and vibrant. It allows you to be able to see details better, and as such is best used in bathrooms and kitchens, as we humans like to have clean bedrooms, for example, which we might not be able to keep so clean if we can see properly. As such, lights that are above the 5000 Kelvin are mainly used in hospitals and offices. This is because these type of lighting give off a clean and alert effect. It wakes you up and lets your eyes see with greater detail. As an example, I did find this series of images on the internet where a same room is being illuminated by different color temperatures. The first one is definitely cozy. When I see that, I just want to throw myself to the bed and relax. In the second image, however, note how the illumination helps in changing the contrast of the room. If we take a look at the table down on the right and compare it with the previous image, we can see that we can detect a lot more detail. If this table were to have dust, it is actually pretty spotless on the picture, we would notice it faster with a cooler light. the effect of this is only accentuated once we go a notch up. We are now able to see better where the dust has gathered at the bank at the end of the bed, and the floor will also reveal more details to us. Our next topic will be how to roughly calculate how much lighting you actually need. I might need to start with a disclaimer though, because as far as I know, this isn't an exact science, and much come down to simple experimentation and what you like the most. I also wasn't able to find a single mathematical equation that will take into account distance or height of the lighting and room. There's also a unit mix-up between lumens and lux, but as far as I could tell, the general rule of thumb seemed to be to multiply the width and length of the room and then multiply it with the recommended lux level, which are basically constants arbitrarily set by other people. They differ from side to side that I could find. This multiplication will give you the lumens you actually need. Since I did not trust this method very much, I did buy a small, not very exact lux meter, such as this one, and began checking out what kind of lighting I found most comfortable to work with. Your mileage may obviously vary, but I did end up buying a 4000 lumen roof fixture and found out through experimentation that I find a 70% dimmer level comfortable to work with during the day, as this will provide me with around 500 lux at eye level. There is a huge drop at 2 centimeters of the light fixture. I'm getting readings of about 10,000 lux, while at 1 meter this will drop down to 1700 lux. The penalty for the height is therefore a big factor to take into account. The most important aspect though in light setup is the purpose of each light and how we use it. In general, we can speak of layers, of which there are 3. The most important and obvious one is the general layer, which will always give off sufficient light from a fixed point, mainly from the roof. Then we also have a ambient or background layer, which is primarily used as decoration or filler. And finally, there are lamps dedicated to perform specific tasks. The general layer are, simply put, the lights that hang from your ceiling and are the first ones you buy whenever you, for example, buy a new house. They have the objective of providing illumination to a big area and must fill that area with general purpose light. As an example, I will be showcasing my kitchen, mainly because of my home office's geometry. I couldn't take a single picture that demonstrates clearly the concepts I'm about to explain. Take into account though that this applies not only to kitchens but all rooms in your house. If we direct our attention to the ceiling, we can see that in this picture the general lights are on, and these will provide the vast majority of illumination to the room. In fact, the convenience of these type of lamps is that I can redirect the light of each spot in order to highlight more areas. As such, I'm effectively using at least one of these lights as a task light, but more on that in a minute. The next layer that needs some explanation is the ambient layer. This one is very useful as it is light created to fill the voids in the general and task lighting can't fill in, and thus also provide a playroom for us to be able to position and create a nice ambientation between all layers, especially at night. Important to note is that we don't use ambient lighting for any specific task, and that LED strips will be your friend in this case because you can hide them very easily and will give you a nice effect. And as a small pro tip from me: if you need to soften an LED strip and you don't feel like buying a dedicated plastic cover, use baking paper, because it will create the exact same effect. I have now turned on the ambient lighting in the kitchen, of which up until now I've installed only one. It is located at the back top of the kitchen, providing a nice background, which really comes in handy at night. You can pretty obviously see that this ambient light is filling in the space with a warmer light than the general lighting of the kitchen. This is mainly because it is easier on the eyes at night, but more on that later. The area that it illuminates is pretty the area that it mainly illuminates is pretty bounded to be only a specific area where no other light will reach or has no practical utility. You can hide LED strips behind mirrors or other small areas, which will give a floating effect, effectively creating the illusion of a bigger space than what it really is. Finally, we have come to the task lighting layer, which can also be very interesting and provide us with even more playroom. The main focus of this layer is to illuminate a specific area where we will be performing an activity that requires us to focus our attention on, such as reading, typing, washing dishes, cooking, etc. Because these type of lights are more focused, they generally have a narrower light beam angle, which allows for more light to be concentrated at a specific location. As an example, we can now see also some other lights turned on above the countersink and underneath the extractor hood. These will illuminate these specific areas that require more attention than the rest properly. Now, with this now fresh in our minds, we can begin to play with these lights in order to create different ambientations. At night, for example, we can leave the ambient light on. This is ideal because it is a very small LED strip which consumes almost no electricity at all and provides us a path through the kitchen to the bedroom and vice versa. If we just need to wash a plate, we can choose to turn on a single task light, or we can choose to just leave the general layer on during a gloomy day. If we now combine all layers so far, we can see how the lights are able to flood the entire room. But while each one has its own specific purpose, they can all work together in order to create a nice atmosphere. At the office, on the other hand, I did install a roof fixture that is able to dim the main light, which will provide me with the option of illuminating from around 80 lux up to about 1000 lux. I keep it, however, at about 500 lux, which is comfortable for me. It is a cold light, which is really helpful in the morning in order to wake me up, and it is also a very clean light. It allows me to see all details and textures in the room clearly. At night, however, I turn the main light off, but will turn on the much warmer ambient light, which provides me with about 50 lux of illumination. Finally, at night, if I have to do a lot of typing, I will also turn on the task light, which provides me with around 1000 lux of focus lighting. Here we can see all the lights turned on. Everything can be seen quite clearly and it is difficult to miss a detail. However, if I turn the main light off, I create a pretty good scene that illuminates only the background, reducing strain on the eye due to the light the monitors are giving off. Finally, and only to compare, this is how it looks like when I turn off the background lights as well, but only leave the task lights on. There is not much light left over for other activities but to see the keyboard. At last but not least, we have come almost to the end of this talk, where I'm going to talk a bit more about maybe the practical side of things and provide some in-depth information. The first big recommendation I have is that you buy a professional lighting system for at least your main light or fixture. The reason behind this is a pretty important one. We must dissipate heat, and we must take into account that the main light can be in some cases powered on for 8 hours or more a day in, day out, in summer or in the winter. This will generate heat, and this heat will tend to rise, and it has to go somewhere. LED lights are particularly bad managing heat, so generally speaking, professional equipment will have bigger and better dissipation technology than consumer products, and will also offer more options for us. As a rule of thumb, whenever you are buying professional lighting, you will most probably come across more technical information, such as CRI and good lux and lumens figures, which you now know how to interpret and read. So with all this new knowledge, we can comfortably say we can now understand the title of this product completely. It's a 4000 lumens 60 by 60 LED panel, which has a color temperature of 3000 Kelvin, providing 80% of faithfulness color reproduction, and a UGR index of 19, which, albeit not the most comfortable light there is, it's definitely not one that's going to give you headaches either. Best of all is the pricing of this fixture. However, we still have to fill in some options, which will increase the price. LED lights will function always with DC voltage instead of AC. In order for a LED light to work properly, we can't connect it directly to the cables at our house. Instead, we have to connect it to a driver, which will convert AC into DC. One thing worthy of note, though, is that sometimes the driver is integrated into the fixture itself, but whenever possible, try to buy a apart driver, because it is way cheaper to replace only the driver, which is the most likely part to burn out, than to replace the whole fixture. Apart from a driver, you might also come across the controller, which is particularly useful in case of dimmable lights. It will communicate to the driver what it should do, as it can translate user input into a digital signal. As with drivers, there are fixtures where the controller is actually built into the driver, but in a more professional environment you can buy every separate part. If we were to dim the light, one of the most popular systems out there that was made specifically for the professional market is the 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 volt systems. How this works is that in case of the 0 to 10 volt system, the driver will send out a low DC voltage signal of 10 volts, which we can regulate with a potentiometer such as the one depicted here. The 1 to 10 system on paper works by letting the controller send a DC signal to the driver within that range. However, in practice, I've seen the drivers will send out a signal nonetheless. Because we're dealing with a pretty low voltage, there might be a significant voltage drop in the line, so be aware of the distance of the wire, as well as possible interference with the AC line, which needs to go to the controller as well. Some say that the best smart home is the one where you don't even realize it is smart. This is where this particular controller comes in, because what it allows you to do is to use a simple push, or also called momentary button, to control dimming of your lights, such as this one. Shortly pushing the button once will toggle the light, while long pressing it will either dim or brighten the light slowly. There's a big offer on these types of controllers as well, and they are fairly cheap, but I specifically like this one because it will connect to a smart home system, and as such I am able to control it however I want, basically. Now, why did I mention this specific Tuya product? It is because Tuya can connect to Home Assistant, which is a hub that allows you to locally, where possible, control your smart home products. And best of all is that this is open source and offers a lot of integrations already. I won't go into any further detail now though, because that could easily be another talk worth of information. If you want to go, however, entirely DIY, you should definitely take a look at a company called Shelly. I have no affiliations whatsoever with them, but the main reason behind this recommendation is because they are very developer and open source friendly. Their products work very well with, for example, Home Assistant. They continuously bring out new products. There are also some other systems which I thought were maybe worth mentioning. Two of the most famous protocols are DMX and DALI. My big recommendation, however, is that you search for a system that integrates nicely with what you already have, be it Zigbee, DMX, KNX, MQTT, Home Assistant, or any other. If you want to edit video, there's a lot of material to read out on the internet, and I won't go into this topic now. If you Google for 3-point lighting system, there are a ton of sites and video explaining this topic in detail. Well, that was it for today. I'm Camilo Sperberg. I am within a tweet's distance. @review is my handle, should you have any further question. I will also be on the Discord channel hanging out today, so make sure to check that out as well. If you want to get to know more about all of these subjects, the following references were my main inspiration to do this talk. So yeah, be sure to check them out, and have a great day.